Hey guys, so I wanted to do a quick video on how to find a proper squat stance for you. Someone asked me today, and this actually has been an ongoing question, so let's go over it. Now, when you talk about squats, the first thing you want to think about is your pelvic orientation. So if you can imagine, if you look at the bony aspects of your hips, it's called the anterior superior leg spine, aka ASIS. Do they naturally, when you're standing, do they naturally point down? Basically what that means from the side view, are you in an anterior pelvic tilt, okay? Most commonly, a lot of people, especially who have desk jobs and sitting, are in this position, okay? And what happens is when you're in that anterior tilt, your pelvis is shifted forward and opens up. So if you can imagine the acetabulum where your femur sits in, they're here facing down and out. And what that does is it opens up your femurs to be in more of a external rotated state, okay? So this is just understanding where you are with your anatomy, which is a key point of understanding of what is a great squat stance for you. So again, if you're tilted forward, externally rotated out, and to mind you, talking about ankle mobility, more or less, this positioning is going to be a little bit more conducive or easier for you to get into a squat. Now, here's where the problem lies. If you are in this position, but yet continue to feed into this position as you go down, do you really think that there's a lot of pelvic control here, right? There's a lot of muscle imbalances going on. Your rib cage is flared out, so that means that the abdominals are disengaged, pelvic floor is disengaged, and now you're talking about going into a load for this. Not good, not safe, not healthy, okay? So with this, if you are a wider stance or an expansive squatter, we would call, you want to make sure that you still have that control, the pressure systems between your diaphragm and pelvic floor as you go down into that squat. So instead of remaining in that anterior pelvic tilt here and squatting, you want to continue to bring it into more of that neutral stance and then going into that squat down, okay? So that's the first thing. The second is your ankle mobility, right? So if you have limited ankle mobility, a narrow squat is going to be very limited for you, right? So you're going to be sitting back, leaning forward more, a lot of not good stuff going on here, okay? So in order to maintain a narrow squat, you're more or less going to be more in a compressive state, or your pelvis is naturally getting into more of a neutral stance where your acetabulum or the sockets that your femur sit in are a little bit forward, okay? So with that, it's naturally more comfortable to be in this narrow stance. Now, a lot of you guys that have been watching me, I'm a very narrow stance person. I am just comfortable being that, and I am a little bit more in a compressive state. And also too, I have the ankle mobility and range of motion in dorsiflexion, okay? Those are going to be the big factors of knowing if you're more narrow, more wide, okay? So again, more narrow here. When you're going down, with any type of squatting pattern, you want to think about knees forward, torso upright, because this is a squat, quad dominant, knee dominant exercise, not your hip hinge or the back squat in powerlifting, okay? Different concept, okay? There's nothing wrong with those, just a different concept. So in your narrow stance, if you notice forward, more or less I am hip width here. I'm trying to maintain an upright pelvis, but first things first, I set myself. So rib cage down, exhale, pelvic tilt, forward here, and then I'm just thinking about pulling my knees forward as I drop down into that squat here, and then come on up out of that. Now, the reason why I'm a big advocate for narrow stance squatting as also front racked is it just makes my anterior, my core, my pelvic floor just solid armor, that it's completely safe and I'm able to lift heavy in those positions. Now, that is limiting as far as when I want to go heavy in weight, that's when I throw on a safety bar, right? So safety bar is that device that goes on. Just a little bit more back rack, but it's not completely back squat. When you're working on barbell back squatting, the problem that I have, and I know a lot of people have, is the range of motion to reach that. So what happens is your rib cage flares up here, and then you throw your pelvis and rib cage out of whack. So just to recap, the factors to consider with knowing your squat stance is what stance is suitable for stacking your pelvis and rib cage. Are you more narrow, that you're able to stack and squat with that stack position, or are you more wide and can control that stack position? And what's the relationship between that and your ankle flexibility and range of motion? Me personally, I like to go to the squat that helps me feel safest in my torso, safest that I'm not going to strain any pelvic floor muscles, and also where I feel strongest, where I know that I have a heavy, safe lift that I'm not going to throw my back out because of the positioning that I am. With all of that said, breathing is key in your squat cycle. There's different maneuvers depending on who you talk to, powerlifting, just Olympic lifters. They don't really squat too much, different. But anyways, so there's different ways you can go through it. When I'm not doing a heavy PR or heavy lifts, I like to breathe through the cycle. So I like to inhale down and exhale up as I go through the cycle. If I am going heavier, I do a quick inhale, hold, down, keep holding with that pressure, come up as I exhale, and exhale more if I need that. That's just me personally, but I just want to note that breathing is key in knowing what works best for you and playing with different breathing patterns with your squatting, and that will help you determine of what works best, because I will do this squat the same weight. Rep number 1 will be a breath cycle, inhale down, exhale up. I'll do the same exact weight, rep number 2, and it'll feel completely different based on my breathing. So just things to consider. Hopefully you learned from this. And